around you, God strategically placed them in your life to add to you to become salt. What do you thirst for today? Another thing salt's good for, and we have to watch this one, is salt can also be used as a preservative, right? And most people know that, and you know, hundreds of years ago when they were trying to get food across the oceans in the ships, they would cure their meat with salt and all that good stuff and would cause it to last for a long time. And many of you might like that salty ham stuff, the country ham and all that good things. But the danger is that salt only becomes a preservative for something that's already dead and dried up. So we have to watch this because most Christians I found, I'm not saying everybody, so don't throw yourself in the mix unless you really feel like this is you, but I grew up in the church all my life. I'm telling you, I've seen some stuff. I'm sure you have too. And I find it so amazing because most of the Christians I grew up, and I love them with all my heart. I don't condemn them, but they feel like it was their job to preserve all the world from sin. They were just the flesh police. Does anybody know anybody like that? They really felt like it was their job to go around and make sure all the world was saved and that Jesus was ready to come back, and they spent themselves trying to cure everybody. It got quiet in here. I got a hand clap from my buddy in the back. I appreciate you, bro. I'm glad he's on the page with me today. Does anybody know someone that they really feel like it's their moral obligation to cure all your problems? And somehow they got it mixed up. And the thing is that salt doesn't work unless it's already dried and dead. So if we're really talking about salt, my job in preserving things simply is not to keep it alive, but it's to keep something that's dead from rotting to the point that it can be brought back to life, if you understand what I'm saying. In other words, my job is not to come in your life and tell everything you're doing wrong and air out all your business and everything and try to cure all your problems, but my job is to come in your life as the salt that God has added to you through me, and I'm simply supposed to take the pieces of your life that's dead and lifeless right now and say, we're going to hold this thing together. You can make it through tomorrow. Be encouraged and not discouraged because you're far too blessed to be depressed, and preserve that part of your life till God can come back in, and just like he did through the Holy Ghost, his son he brought back to life that was dead, that God can resurrect dead things in your life. My job is just to keep you preserved and not give up. Somebody say salt. That means I've got to find somebody on the edge of giving up and saying, guess what? Even though you've got right here in the midst of your sorrow, you can find joy because tomorrow's coming. The Bible says that you would be rewarded for all of your weeping, that your tears would be bottled up in heaven as in an oil of joy, of gladness that he would give back to you. So if we just recap, and we're talking about salt, it amazes me because I've got to add to your life, but first, before I add, I've got to be on your life, or I've got to be mixed up in it. Unless you sprinkle salt on something, it does nothing. So that means I've got to get around somebody that needs some flavor, that needs something added in their life, and through the process I've got to create some thirst and help preserve all the dead parts. Why? Because I'm salt. Somebody say salt. Light of the world. Light. Such a powerful thing. From the very time that humans were planted on this earth, we had this infatuation with this thing called fire, right? Why? Because it brought warmth to us, it brought protection, and most importantly, it allowed us when we're walking through our house at night not to stub our toe on the couch in the midst of our cave, wherever we are. The light was important for one main reason, is because it enabled us to see further in the darkness. Our job is to be like a city sitting on a hill. Anybody ever seen the city? You've been to New York City or any other big city? Las Vegas, have you ever seen those? And if you haven't been there personally, have you seen pictures or things on TV and you see? And some I remember growing up as a child, as I grew up in Manassas, is outside of the apartment where we lived there, there was so many lights around all the time, it never got dark. I loved that as a kid because I could always go outside, and if my parents permissed me to, it didn't matter what time it was always some type of ambient light present that I could play ball or do whatever I wanted to do, riding my bike, and I loved that. And then we moved to this place called Castlewood, and we lived in a cow field, and I remember the first night I was just freaking out because I couldn't see nothing. And I had good neighbors, Patty and Oakley, so it was okay. I didn't have bad neighbors. It was okay. But I realized how important and how dependent I had become upon the light. And the thing is about light, have you ever had your power go off? Isn't it amazing how dependent you are upon light and you don't even appreciate it until it's gone? think of it, that the purpose of our life in this world is to be a beacon that can shine into dark places. Now, this is the thing about light, is it's not discriminatory on who it shines on. And then I've got an issue with people that comes to church and feels like that we can't reach certain people because they're that way. It makes me want to slap them with some love. I'm telling you what. If we're really light, we don't care who we shine on or what we expose. Our job is not to be discriminatory or say that what I've got's not for you, but it's for you. But our job is simply just to shine some light. Somebody say light. We are the light of the world, and our job is not to hide that light, but to let it shine. Let it shine. Okay, I feel like we're on the same page with this thing. Let's look at Numbers chapter 18. When we start talking about salt, it's important to know this. Now, I'm going to read half this, and it's not going to apply exactly what we're talking about today, but the latter part will. It says, all the heave offerings, the lifted out and kept portions of the holy things which the Israelites give to the Lord, I give to you and to your sons and your daughters with you as a continual debt forever. It is a covenant of salt. Why is a covenant of salt important? It tells us in parentheses there, that cannot be dissolved or violated. Wow. Did you know the Bible, when it starts talking about salt, it's instituting a principle that salt is not dissolved and it can't be violated. Something I find amazing about salt is that no matter what you mix with it, it can't be polluted to the point that it can't be used. If you take salt and you mix it with rock, you can put it on a dusty road and it'll keep the dust down. Now, you don't want to take rocks and salt and put on your mashed potatoes. It's no longer good for that. But even though it's changed and it's been mixed with something different, whatever it's mixed to, it has an ability to be used for a purpose, no matter what it's mixed with. And you can place salt in water, and the more salt you put in, the colder the temperature has to be. It actually will prevent some freezing. And when it gets snowy out here, and our ushers, they're nice, they get the big 50-gallon buckets out, and they go spreading salt, because salt, when it's placed on ice, will cause it to melt. It amazes me because salt is not dissolvable in the sense that whatever it's applied to, and it can't be violated because it's always true to itself. Does that make sense to anybody? We are called not to be watered down or be able to be dissolved by what we're currently in or around, but whatever we're added to, whether it's the ground or whether it's food, whatever it is, salt, it can't be violated because it's true to itself. I just got to take a chance and just preach right here, because if you ever really knew who you were in God, not who somebody said you were or not who somebody told you that you should be, but if you really understood who you were and become true to yourself, regardless of what you're placed in, you'll never be dissolved. You'll never be violated to the point that you'll become something different, and you'll always have the capacity to add and do good with a purpose. Yes. But how many people don't even know themselves today? You know, if we pass the microphone around, and it's not as big of a problem, I guess, as in the adults as it is in a younger generation, but I did this not too long ago in a youth conference. We just had this little rap session thing, and I passed the microphone around. I said, what do you want to be when you get older? And nobody could tell me. Because as soon as somebody would say something, they'd say, hey, I want to be that. Then somebody else would say something, they'd say, hey, I want to be that too. And I found there's a whole generation that don't even know themselves and know the reason they were placed on this earth. That video we watched just a few moments ago, it said, what are you here for? That's the million-dollar question. Because the moment you can understand that will be the moment that your life will be forever changed, because it gives you purpose and it gives you some type of stability that you can't be dissolved, and you'll never be violated of your purpose because you're salt. Yes. You believe me? Can we go further with it today? If we start talking about salt, in Mark chapter 9, verse 50, it says it like this. It's where it's going to get tough. Salt is good, beneficial, but if salt has lost its saltness, how will you restore the saltness to it? Don't have time for that. This is what I want to talk about. Have salt within yourselves and be at peace and live in harmony with one another. Have salt within yourselves. I believe God knew what he was talking about when he wrote all this stuff down. Yes. For the simple fact that he knew we had to have a certain content of salt. I believe, as I was reading some yesterday about it, I think if my facts are correct, maybe somebody could correct me, that an average human being that is about 50 kilograms has about 7 tablespoons of salt in his system that keeps them running and flowing and moving, all that other good stuff. And the Bible knew what it was talking about when he talked